So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, if you ask any Lions fan, if you ask any football analyst, or anybody that talks about the Detroit Lions, most of them are going to tell you that the Lions should address defensive tackle this season. They're going to tell you that in the offseason, they should either sign somebody like Daron Payne, hope they can draft somebody like Jalen Carter, or they're going to sign somebody or draft somebody at that position to improve the Detroit Lions pass rushing presence on the interior of the defensive line. Now, there have been a lot of names thrown around, right? There's been Daron Payne in free agency. There's been Jalen Carter and Tyree Wilson from the draft. But everybody's seemingly forgetting a player that was a former top 50 pick for the Detroit Lions who, yes, has struggled very significantly with injuries, but in the lone game or two that he was relatively healthy, he was a dominant force on the Detroit Lions defensive line. And that player is Levi Onwuzurike, the former top 50 defensive tackle from the University of Washington. Really never got a chance to find his footing in the NFL so far, as he has really struggled with a back injury, even dating back to his final year at Washington. Now, Levi Onwuzurike did end up playing all 16 games of his rookie year, but really didn't do so at a high level, right? And when Dan Campbell, the head coach, was asked about it, he said, yeah, that guy's a warrior, that guy fought, that guy worked very hard to suit up and be on the field every single week for us, but he was never at 100%. This guy was never pass rushing at 100%. This guy was never playing at 100%, and that back injury really, really hurt him. However, Levi Onwuzurike did play one or two games at full health, and not necessarily 100%, but relatively close. We're talking 95% of what we could have gotten from Levi in his rookie season, and he looked really, really good. Now, granted, this wasn't the preseason versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. It wasn't against a top offensive line in football, and it was with the backups. But Levi looked really, really good. He was the Detroit Lions' highest graded defensive player in those two games. And before the back injury really started to bug him, you could see the twitch and the pass rushing ability and the flash that Levi Onwuzurike was selected to be at the 46th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. Now, it's a big if, right? Levi Onwuzurike has really, really struggled to stay healthy in his NFL career, and I think that it's unlikely to expect him to play every single game next year or play a significant role next year, especially if the back surgery that he had isn't going to fix the problem. It's just going to kind of push the problem down the road like a couple of other tries have done. But there is still a chance and there is still an opportunity for this former top 50 pick to come out in 2023 and absolutely shock the fan base. Now, Levi Onwuzurike did not play this season, didn't even make it to the preseason before being placed on injured reserves, and there is a big reason for that, right? His back injury really, really lingered him, and he came into the offseason feeling healthy, came into the preseason feeling healthy, put on about 15 to 20 pounds of muscle, looked big, looked fast, looked twitchy, and the Lions coaching staff was very high on Levi Onwuzurike coming into training camp. Unfortunately, his back injury flared up yet again, and he had to be shut down for the year to have back surgery. Now, I did a little bit of research, and even though it's not exactly the same, this back surgery is similar to what Tony Romo had in the 2013 season in December. It's not the exact same surgery, but it is on a similar part of the body in a similar place, both having to do with discs in the lower back. And Tony Romo's surgery did go very well, and he returned to training camp the next season. Now, obviously, they play two very different positions, and they play two very different styles of football, right? And one's 100+ pounds heavier and plays a whole different position. but the surgery was a similar one, and it showed that a player can return to football after a back surgery of that caliber, and that was really the only point of doing the research. Is I wanted to see, is it likely or is it even possible that Levi returns and plays at an NFL level? So even though it might be unlikely, and even though he might not be ready for the start of the season, it is very possible that Levi does return to the Detroit Lions at some point during 2023, similarly to what we saw with Romeo Okwara a year ago. And going into this year with his torn Achilles, we could see a late season addition of Levi Onwuzurike, who's finally at full health and finally able to show the pass rushing ability, right? Because he was drafted to do that. He was drafted to be the 3-tech. He was drafted to be the Chris Jones and the Aaron Donald of our defense, and he really never got the opportunity, right? He was injured all of his rookie season. He came into training camp healthy for the first time and tweaked his back yet again. Right, but before that, before the pads came on, before they started really getting physical, he was praised for his twitch. He was praised for his speed, his explosiveness, his hands, his size that he put on, and he couldn't be a real threat in the NFL. We've seen it in the preseasons of years prior, but he really just has to stay healthy. So how do the Detroit Lions go about the Levi Onwuzurike situation? Do they sit and do they hope that this guy can get healthy and that this player can bounce back and really get a start to his NFL career going into year 3? Or do they say, well, it just didn't work, right? We drafted this guy at the 46th overall pick. He hasn't really played, hasn't been a big part of our defensive line. We have to move on. I think the best thing for the Detroit Lions is plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? I think you have to plan as if Levi Onwuzurike isn't going to return to the Detroit Lions ever. You have to plan like his back surgery might not fix the problem entirely. You have to plan like his back surgery isn't going to fix the problems that he had coming out of college, right? And with that being said, I think that means you have to prepare to spend big money on Daron Payne or Javon Hargrave or, one of the other big name free agents. So you have to plan on drafting a player in the NFL draft that is going to take up that role of the 3-tech. But in the same vein, you're always going to be rooting for Levi to return. You're always going to have this guy in your back pocket. And the best case scenario is the Detroit Lions draft a Jalen Carter. They sign a Daron Payne. They get an elite level pass rusher, and Levi comes back. And Levi turns into what they wanted him to be out of the second round, being a pass rushing 3-tech, being the Lions' Chris Jones, being the Detroit Lions' Aaron Donald. And even if he's not an elite player like those two, he can still have an impact on the Detroit Lions pass rush and the Detroit Lions defense. But worst case, he doesn't come back. He doesn't play football again, like some fans are speculating about. And you plan for the worst, right? You're not building your defense around him, but you still leave the door open for him to potentially come back and be a good addition, be a mid to late season addition to this Detroit Lions pass rush and take it from being potentially a great unit next year to adding just another defensive role player, another defensive piece for Aaron Glenn to work with. Now, I wanted to make this video to talk about Levi because there have been a lot of people to write him off. There have been a lot of people that, sit here and they say, oh, he's not playing, right? He just had back surgery. And there's people speculating he may never play football again. To that, I say there's definitely a chance that is true, right? There's definitely a chance that this surgery is just too much and he decides, I'm not going to put my body through this ever again. But I think there's a greater chance that he keeps fighting. I think that there's a greater chance that he wants to return to football because according to Dan Campbell, this surgery was kind of a last resort thing, and they wouldn't have done it if Levi was going to medically retire. They would not have done it if there wasn't a chance that he could return, and they certainly would not have gone through this back surgery with the expectations of him never playing football again. If he was never going to play football, he probably would not have gotten the surgery because it only really acts up when he's playing in the NFL. So the surgery was done so he can play football. The surgery was done to fix the problems that he had dating back even to his final collegiate season at Washington. And Levi is a great prospect. We've seen it over and over and over again at Washington, and we saw it in the preseason of his rookie year when he was fully healthy. When this guy is healthy, when this guy can play at a top level, he is, or has the potential at least, to be a dominant football player. He has the potential to be a Chris Jones, Aaron Donald level talent. And even though that's definitely jumping the gun a little bit, that's definitely skipping a few steps, Levi has the potential to be a great interior pass rusher, has shown the ability to be a dominant force on the Lions' defensive line, and he just hasn't had the availability on the field to truly display it. So, with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. I just wanted to bring this to your attention, talk about a guy that most people are writing off for 2023, but somebody that could definitely step in mid to late season and be a huge boost to the Detroit Lions. So, with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about Levi Onwuzurike, what you think about this whole situation. Be very curious what you guys think. With all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.